You're listening to the Wayward Atheist podcast. Hello, everyone. If this is your first time listening, thank you for joining us. This is a podcast where borders collide, where the gloves are off, where filters are removed, where we tell you exactly what we think about the news, politics, and religion. The Wayward Atheist podcast is dedicated to free thought, reason, and the pursuit of truth. You can follow us on Twitter at Wayward Atheist, on Spreaker, Stitcher, and iTunes. You can email us at waywardatheistpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a comment on our Facebook page. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
This week's episode of The Wayward Atheist has been brought to you by the crafty freethinker, atheist, humanist, and secular jewelry for those who don't like the idea of wearing a torture device around their neck. Find the crafty freethinker on Etsy and Amazon. Links are in the show notes, or simply Google the crafty freethinker as one word. Hello and welcome to the Wayward Atheist. I'm Dave, aka the Great White North.
I'm Big Back Gay Dave.
I'm Son Winks.
And I'm Ed, the Everyday Atheist.
And this week we are joined by
Jeff Holiday. Hi, I'm a YouTuber.
Of YouTube fame.
Of YouTube fame. Oh,
Well, you just hit a landmark.
That's true. That's true. I did just hit 5,000 subscribers. I'm pretty stoked about that. It's pretty nuts.
Hopefully our 3 listeners will also subscribe.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully some of my listeners will come and check out your guys' podcast too. I'll make a video about it and everything. What I think is actually really funny though, just recently there was this little 12-year-old kid. He did a video that was critical of certain types of identity politics. Some other guy tried to shout him down. And because all these big name YouTubers found out about it, this kid went from 2 subscribers 3 days ago to now way more than I have. Ridiculous amounts. He has I think it's 8,000 subscribers right now.
Awesome. It's incredible how that happens.
It's wild.
Well, it's a big world and everybody's on the web. So if it gets tossed around, everybody's going to be jumping on it.
Couldn't agree more.
My first question is just basically, how did you get into YouTube and what made you want to debunk people on YouTube?
Okay. So the original reason I got into YouTube was I was subscribed to a guy named Miles Power, and he does a lot of science and debunking videos and that sort of thing. And I was really inspired by what he did, but I never thought I could in a million years compare to what he does. So, but I was watching a question and answer video that he did, and in one of them, he gave somebody advice to make a YouTube video, and he said, before you start, just realize that your first video is going to be terrible, but every single video after the one you did prior is going to be way better than it. So each consecutive video you make, that's how you get better. And I found that really inspiring. As for the subject matter, I originally started out only talking about science issues, only about science and debunking pseudoscience. And I feel this topic of GMOs, there is a great disparity between what the public embraces versus what we can actually understand with objective science. And I wanted to help while I was going to school, because I can't necessarily speak as an expert yet, but, while I was going to school, I could at least lend my voice.
That was going to be my next question. A lot of your videos seem to be centered around GMOs. Is there a reason why you picked that subject in particular? Is it something that you're studying at school, or is it just pure fact that GMOs save people's lives by feeding them?
There's, I'll be totally honest with you. I think the main reason why I originally started focusing on GMOs is just to be obstinate. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and it is crunchy, hippie central. These people are all about the organic food and the naturalistic lifestyles and that sort of thing. And I've always kind of challenged more the prior accepted norms. And so I think that was mainly one of the big reasons why. But as I started to learn more about it, I realized what was actually at stake with biotech. And that made me even more want to get into it.
I've got a question, and I was just talking to a friend about GMOs literally a couple of days ago. And how do you feel, Jeff, about the juxtaposition between the corporate ethics of companies like Monsanto
Sure.
versus the bullshit GMO conversation that is so prevalent in the hippie environment? And on that, how do you think the best way to combat the juxtaposition in that situation?
Like when people, you start talking about GMOs and people have to conflate every single conversation as a conversation about Monsanto. Yeah.
Correct.
Well,
yeah.
There's an interesting, one of the interesting things of why this has happened is because the regulatory process that we do have for GMOs is more than any other type of food in the world. And no other type of crop goes through the same amount of regulation. So, by and large, the main reason why we have large corporations doing GMOs is because they can afford to have that hiatus, that time to develop these things. So that's why most GMOs are done. They're designed specifically to have high yield, high results, et cetera, et cetera. So naturally, these big companies are going to be part of it. But also, it's just really an unfortunate happenstance of the name. Because the company Monsanto that exists today is not the same company that existed, 60 years ago. That company actually was bought and changed its name, and a different company bought the rights to the name Monsanto and is now the biotech giant that it is today. How to combat that? That's the $50 million question now, isn't it? Because anytime you are talking to somebody who is critical of genetically modified organisms, they will always point to whatever they can about Monsanto. So the best thing that I've found is to bring up other companies that are doing other things. Arctic Apples, for instance, made an apple that doesn't brown when you just cut into it. So like if an apple drops in the ground, it's still perfectly edible, but it doesn't brown as much. And so they don't have to throw it away. Almost half of all apples picked don't make it to market because they're brown, but there's nothing wrong with them. We just throw them away. It's massive waste, massive carbon emission.
Do they use calcium for that? Because I know that like sliced apples that you can buy in a package that don't brown, they use calcium, I think, for that.
It's so the actual protein inside apples that causes the browning causes it because it's a reaction to oxygen atmosphere. And so the calcium, when they treat the calcium like that, that's how they block that effect from happening. Mm-hmm. But these apples, that gene that produces that one protein that causes it to brown, they just turned the gene off. They didn't even remove it. They turned it off.
Nice.
And that's all they did.
In Newfoundland, where I live, they've been doing experiments using a certain portion of the DNA of codfish that produces a natural antifreeze, and using it to make crops more resistant to climate, like as in colder temperatures. Now, the big joke when it first started was, are we going to have fishy tomatoes? But it actually allows the optimal yield is able to be expanded because of the longer growing time, especially in certain climates where you have a short growing season.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful invention.
They should look at the pine beetle for that, because the pine beetle has a natural antifreeze in it. That's why you see the big kill-offs in British Columbia and Alberta, because it needs to go below 20 below zero in order for these beetles to die off for the year. And if those temperatures don't hit, then they don't die off and they can continue to kill the pine trees.
Interesting.
So a good bug to look into would be that for that for sure. And I would still eat the fuck out of the tomato that was mixed with pine beetle, just so everybody knows.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about logic.
Sure.
I like the way that you were understanding of maybe other people not being in the same place as you, or maybe not having the same education as you, but you're trying to get the concept of logic across before you got into the meat of the subject. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I try to. Logic is an interesting thing because it's an emotional trap. Logic and skepticism and like all these things, even the most altruistic people fall into these basic traps. I mean, I could be disparaging and call them pseudo-intellectualism, but it's not. It's a human behavior. When you feel like you truly understand an issue, you have this tendency to wrap yourself in a protective bubble, and you feel like your logic is solid. The truth of the matter is that logic in and of itself, as like any philosophical concept, is extremely flawed, and it can have many different facets that can be penetrated, tested, waged against, and even torn completely down. And the best thing that I can do when I'm going to converse with people, especially in a one-sided conversation like a YouTube video, is I can try to, as accurately as possible, explain why I logically have found myself in the position I am. And hopefully, at best, people can at least understand why I'm there. They might even agree. That'd be even better. But, at worst, I can still say that I tried and still tried to say that I conveyed myself with honesty.
Yeah, that sounds good. My last question, more of a name.
Sure.
So give me your thoughts when I put out this name, Jeff Smith.
I hear he's a hell of a ballroom dancer.
Maybe explain to the listeners a little
Sure.
bit about Jeff Smith.
Jeffrey Smith is he's a ballroom dancer. And he
Yogi Flyer.
Yeah, he believes he can levitate by using yogic magic. And he also touts himself as a scientist. He runs the Institute for Responsible Technology, which is basically a make-believe organization that he invented to try and tell people how dangerous certain aspects of their life is. The reality of it is that Jeffrey Smith is another public speaking wellness coach. That's it. That's all he is.
And he tried to big brother Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, he did. He did. I wouldn't say that I'm very proud of my older videos. I was very thorough.
I thought that was good, actually.
You did?
I thought you represented yourself very well in that.
That's good. That's an old video.
Yeah, but you could have been really over the top, and you weren't.
That's true.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, he went through and did a systematically long, fiesta of pseudoscience to try and basically knock Neil deGrasse Tyson down a peg. And it didn't work. It had no teeth. There was no basis in any type of reason or.
It also wasn't
evidence.
astronomy. It wasn't astronomy. It was about GMOs, right?
Yeah. And it was all about GMOs. And he based this 25-minute video that he made to take down Neil deGrasse Tyson, based on a 40-second clip when somebody asked Neil deGrasse Tyson randomly at a convention or something, what do you think about GMOs? And he basically was like, we've been cultivating crops and animals for thousands of years. I think everybody just needs to chill the fuck out, I could swear on your podcast.
Oh yeah, no. No word is off limits.
Sweet, great. Yeah. And so from that little interaction, he built this 25-minute long, I'm going to take you down. He's awful. He's terrible. He's a terrible
He's
human.
awkward as fuck too, isn't he?
He is. He's like a little weasel.
He is a little weasel for sure.
I was just thinking, Bill Nye changed his mind on GMO.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he just in the last couple of years?
He did. He was very. He was talking about being very, very careful. That was his main thesis of his argument for GMOs is that we had to be careful, and he didn't think that we had done enough testing. And then he got challenged by a bunch of people, so he went and talked to a bunch of industry giants, including Monsanto. And
yeah, I saw the video.
That
he did at Monsanto. Yeah.
Yeah, and he came out and he's like, actually, I looked at the data and we have nothing to worry about. So we're good.
So just before Ed jumps in and David, can you make layman me, understand the whole Monsanto Roundup bullshit palaver that's going on?
Okay. So Roundup is the commercial name of an herbicide known as glyphosate. Glyphosate is an extremely low toxicity level design spray, specifically just to try and kill weeds and this, that, and the other thing. So glyphosate, people are worried because Monsanto has made crops that can withstand glyphosate being sprayed on them. So rather than having to be very careful about your application, you can just simply brush over the crop with glyphosate, and the crops that aren't resistant, or the plants that aren't resistant, will die. So the weeds die and your food crop stays the same. People are worried because they feel that basically you're eating glyphosate when you eat these vegetables, which you're not. I mean, you wash your vegetables. I mean, even if this is organic, if you eat organic food, you should wash your vegetables because there's organic pesticides and they don't have to wash them off. and you can get sick from that. You should always wash your vegetables and it'll get rid of any glyphosate residue. But glyphosate in and of itself is less toxic than coffee. It's less toxic than coffee. The notion that somehow this is going to hurt you is ridiculous. But I do have to say, there's one that they always point to. There was a guy who was promoting Monsanto, and he told this interviewer that glyphosate is totally safe. And so they pull out a glass of Roundup, and they hand it to him, and they're like, well, why don't you drink it? And he lost his shit. He absolutely would not. And I can tell you why he did that. Roundup is not pure glyphosate. They have other industrial chemicals inside of it that are not safe to drink. You absolutely should not drink like a glass of Roundup. But if you had a shot glass of pure glyphosate, you could drink it as a normal human being. You'd be totally fine. It would not hurt you. You'd probably get gas. Citation needed.
Fair enough. And the last question that I've got is often anti-GMO people / people that wish to disparage Monsanto and other big seed companies talk about the seed storage and the seeds only yielding one crop. What information have you got about that?
So we've been banking seeds for over 100 years. I mean, that's a part of the agricultural process that's been going on for a long time, forever. But the only lasting one season, so there's two parts to it. Monsanto and a lot of other crop companies that sell seeds, they sell them on contracts, and they sell them on a yearly contract. And some people think that's a nefarious thing, but honestly, it's part and parcel with any type of seed company that you would work with, whether it's conventional, GMO, or organic. Now, there's nothing nefarious about it. It means that after 1 year, if the seed didn't perform the way you didn't want to, then you don't have to renew your contract and you can just do a different contract. But everybody buys seeds. Every agricultural bigwig buys their seeds because that way they don't have to go through the process of trying to cultivate their own seeds for next year, which takes up a huge amount of land, and it means you're not producing any food while you do that. It's a very specific way to cultivate. As far as plants only being able to, that's what they used to call the Terminator technology. Nobody uses it. There's a moratorium on it. Monsanto themselves actually specifically stated that they did not think anybody should use the Terminator seed technology because it doesn't work very well. It's kind of pointless. And if for some reason some sci-fi movie cataclysm thing happened, well, let's just not use it anyway. It's just a dumb idea. So that's like the basic gist of it.
So they're no more cunty than any other big corporation. Corporations are cunty, but
yeah, they're cunty. They're
cunty for sure. Yeah. But Monsanto is no more cunty than any other. I've
got 3 internet friends who work for Monsanto. Great guys. Love them. They're awesome. They see the podcast. Hi guys, you know who you are. But it's a corporation. And a corporation is always going to act like a corporation. And to think that it's going to somehow be any worse or less than that is just stupid. I mean, it's...
And the U.S. laws have made corporations be able to be more cunty than in other places.
Cunty.
Extra cunty, with calling them individuals or giving them individual rights.
Oh yeah. They have their own.
In Canada, we don't share that illogical stance. I have to admit that because I never gave a shit about GMOs. I would eat anything. It doesn't really matter to me. Like sure. I go fishing and I'll eat fish that the government of Canada mixed together a long time ago, speckled trout and a lake trout. They call them splakes. I don't care. I'll eat it. But sure. I did buy into the fact that Monsanto was worse than it is. And
yes, so did I.
And it wasn't even like I was like, I didn't search out the conspiracy theory, but I heard it so often that I was
it's
like,
everywhere.
It was just in the back of my mind, Blackwater. Wow. Until I actually looked into it, and then I was like, well, they're no different than fucking GE or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's just so pervasive too. And, you know, there are main reasons for it. A lot of it is because it caters to one of the most powerful demographics on social media, which is mommies. It caters to mommies, caters to people's desire to be part of something special or unknown or secret. You know, this is the secret knowledge that most people don't understand. Don't you know they're poisoning your children with your food? I mean, how sensational, how amazing. Are you kidding me? Holy sweet fucking shit of Christ. well, obviously I have to pay attention to this random internet meme and see what it is. And for the most part, most people don't have an idea of where they might go to try and find something to challenge that. And as a conspiracy is created, as a conspiracy develops, it becomes a self-fulfilling reinforced machine. And it finds ways to combat, people who might challenge it. Oh, you're shill. You're being paid, obviously. You're an agent provocateur. Of course you are. Nobody could ever defend this horrible thing because of all these things that I heard on the internet. Holy God. Oh, blah, 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 blah.
Do you think, Jeff, that the fact that the FDA is becoming more self-regulated and therefore not independent also adds sway to the misconception of GMOs?
I think that might be part of it, but the FDA is a complicated issue because whereas it is kind of becoming self-defining in certain ways, we did have, the FDA had its legs cut out from under it when it comes to the supplement industry. The FDA does not have to have the safety proven of anything that's, if you look at the ingredient label and it says supplement facts or supplement data instead of ingredient data, it's a supplement. The FDA did not have to prove to the FDA that it's safe. Did not have to. And there's no regulation. There's nothing. Homeopathy, vitamins, supplements, energy drinks. I mean, half the energy drinks are chock full of whatever the fuck they want to put in there.
Dick pills that you guys sell in your gas stations?
Dick pills. Yeah, dude, absolutely. You got these people who are telling you that you can take all these 5 different supplements, it's going to cure your mom's cancer. You take these other supplements, it's going to make your boner 6 feet goddamn big. All these other things. It's just ridiculous. And so we have this interesting balance because on one way we're saying the FDA is out of control and we can't trust what they're saying. But at the same time, we can trust everything over here the FDA has no regulation over, and it's being hawked by some smiling, soulless person on a website, It's fucked. Between how these types of things are marketed, the public discrepancies on how we market biotechnology, the rampant corruption in pharmaceutical industries, and how it can correlate to the medical industry and doctors. I mean, the whole sum and total of this is a giant, complicated shit show, and it's easy to just think this is all a conspiracy. I mean, it's not.
I would say the more nefarious when you're looking at the two sides would definitely be when you're looking at people that are creating GMOs, even if they're not doing it to make a food support for 3/4 of the world's population that wouldn't be getting food otherwise.
Sure.
It's still a byproduct of that. The more nefarious out of the two are the homeopathy people, and supplement people that are pushing their product full well knowing it's bullshit and earning a lot of money. So vaccines in Canada, I'll just use my country as an example. They don't make money off of vaccines. As a matter of fact, the government pays for our vaccines. The vaccine company isn't making a lot because when you have a single payer health system, the profit margin just isn't there. It's like it's like a non-profit. So everybody makes a bit of money. Everybody makes a bit of money. The nurse makes money. Everybody, you make your living, but the government itself is not trying to churn a profit off of the medicine. So vaccines itself in particular, even compared to antibiotics and other things, don't turn a big profit. Even in the US, it's not the moneymaker in medicine. The moneymaker in medicine is the bullshit like Viagra and the Cialis and the things that you don't really need that cost you a ton of money. Yep. Like a restless foot fucking disease. I fart too much. Those are the things that make the money. It's not the vaccines, but the homeopathy is the other thing that makes a fucking ton of money. People will pay out the ass because they think it's all fucking natural, where you should just vaccinate your damn children and it's not going to cost any.
It's more than that as well, Dave. It's also the fact that if you have a single payer system, which every other developed country apart from the US does, if the government subsidizes and enforces vaccine use, which they all do, what happens is that there is actually a saving for the health dollar in the long run.
Because of the herd.
Correct, because of the herd mentality. So
absolutely. Not
only is it a cheap, effective way to prevent disease, it then saves the ongoing cost down the track of an unimmunized society.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, Dave, since you're in Canada, have you ever seen a nutrition house?
No.
Okay. Well, it's in there. It's a store. It's like a health supplement store in Canada. So, Nutrition House it's they got a lot of little satellite stores, usually in malls and that sort of thing. And they sell, homeopathic remedies, supplements, diet pills, blah, 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 all those types of things, whey powder, protein. Now, what's interesting about this is, Nutrition House is owned by a man named Wayne Parent. Wayne Parent is the father of Rachel Parent, who is the founder of Kids Right to Know, one of the most wildly popular, successful online campaigns to fight GMOs and to push labeling. And she had her entire, her organization, her big thing, funded by her father. Her father gets paid because he owns nutrition, or he's the CEO of Nutrition House. This is literally money coming from a giant corporate interest being funneled through a nepotistic, family-run social activism network to try and push an actual effort into legislation in a country that it doesn't even start in. Like they fund and they push for labeling laws in America. They don't try it in Canada. They don't even bother. They do it all in America. And that's not the most crazy, fucked up conspiracy. And the worst part is it's all true. Like, you can see the whole thing. It's public knowledge. Oh my God. That's just crazy.
So with the GMO and the labeling, the issue here is that the party that I normally vote for, or not that I normally vote for, I do vote for, and that I do give money to, a lot of the MPs, it's the NDP, which is Social Democrats, so like a Bernie Sanders type party.
Sure, absolutely.
A lot of and even the MP that I had to vote for is anti-GMO, and so we have a thing right now where they're making salmon bigger because they're like, hey, we can genetically modify these salmon during mating or spawning process, however they do it. And you have a fish that's like 3 times the size. So it's obviously gonna feed more people. And there's an issue on the West Coast with losing salmon because they're not as big anymore because most of the big ones have been fished out. And they're trying to, some of the party members, it's not the party's official line, but some of the party members have taken to social media and trying to say that it's not right and it's dangerous. So I was calling them out and asking them, how about a little peer-reviewed study that shows that it's actually dangerous to eat this fish, or it's dangerous to do that. Like I'm willing to listen to you, but show me something that's been peer-reviewed first. And of course they have nothing. They have nothing.
No. And it's usually a haughty retort of, you need data? I mean, this is obvious, of course. Don't you know this is obvious? I'm an extremely liberal guy. I'm an extremely socially liberal guy. I like to think I'm more of a classical liberal than the current day liberalism that's in America, which is just weird. But I suffer from the same thing. Most of the liberal Democrat leadership, especially in Oregon, where I live, all of them are anti-GMO. All of them. The Republican candidate is neutral. There is no pro-GMO candidate because it's a death sentence. It's a death sentence for your career. You can't say anything like that. Bernie was the governor of Vermont? Some shit.
Senator.
He's for labeling because they put labeling in Vermont. I mean, it hasn't gone in. I don't think it's gone into effect yet, and they'll tie it up in courts, of course. But I mean, Bernie's anti-GMO.
Well, he's not just anti-GMO. That's the only real problem that I have with Bernie Sanders is he's pretty science illiterate.
He is pretty science illiterate.
Not just with GMO stem cells and other things as well.
I love my favorite Jewish grandpa. I absolutely love Bernie. I think he's great. He's the kind of guy I would want to have Thanksgiving dinner with. But I don't know. He's a little bit of a wingnut. That's okay though. I like him.
You would expect somebody of his age and not being a scientist, not that I am either by any stretch, but you would expect him to kind of have some not up-to-date ideas, right?
I would expect him as a politician to not necessarily represent the pinnacle of intellectual honesty. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless of his age. He's a politician.
For sure.
Well, I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
The very first one I get all the time, so I figured I'm going to hit you with it.
All right, let's do it.
It's how does evolution disprove irreducibly complex?
What did you say?
Irreducible complexity.
Yeah, there you go.
Irreducible complexity.
And if you haven't heard of it, I'll
William Lane Craig.
No, it's actually Michael Behe. He's from a foundation where they produce pseudoscience to prove the Bible. Discovery.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so how does evolution disprove this? What?
Irreducible complexity.
And
irreducible complexity. What is irreducible complexity?
basically, he's saying that there's things like the flagella of
Sure.
various organisms that is so it's a tiny machine that is so irreducibly, it's so complex at the microscopic level that that it could not have evolved, basically.
It has a propeller, don't you know? A fucking propeller, man.
Oh shit.
The propeller spins.
Yeah. Propeller. There's also ones that are like a Viking boat in a row. Like there's any number of amazing ways in which microscopic life propel itself. And actually, I am perpetually amazed as I continue my work in biology at school at how complex these things are. Even for such simple life forms as they are, it seems so mind-bogglingly crazy. So I understand where. Well, actually, no. I'm pretty sure whoever's coining this term knows full well how bullshit it is. They're just trying to push whatever agenda they have. But it's actually pretty easy. So I got a pretty decent front lawn. Yeah. It's I'd say. It's maybe like 30 feet by 40 feet. My front lawn. Pretty nice. That lawn, 30 feet by 40 feet, at any given point in time, in a 24-hour period, there is an unfathomable amount of genetic drift that's happening. All of this various basic different life forms rubbing up against each other, any number of different cells that are replicating through their mitosis, their meiosis, in all these different ways. In that little patch of grass right out front, there is millions upon millions of different genetic recombinations happening. There are mutations happening there all the time, more than we could count, more than we could even fathomably think about. In your body right now, in the time it takes me to say the word burrito, there are mutations happening so rapidly all over your body. Millions and millions of your cells are dying all the time, and they're being replicated and replaced. And as they replicate and they're replaced, they can mutate, they can change. So in this way, the very idea that in the the amazing stretch of time that just this planet has been in existence and organic life has been on this planet, that it's developed, that somehow anything isn't possible, is one of the stupidest concepts I've ever heard of. Because evolution works because shit happens randomly. It's wild, but it happens so much that if it works, it stays. If it doesn't, it goes. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's really no more complex than that. So that it's ridiculous. These are people who think that you don't mutate in any way, or you don't change. You know, the only time you mutate in your body is if you get cancer or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one I get nailed on Twitter all the time, and I get 140 characters isn't enough to explain this.
It's not. That's why I make videos.
Yeah.
What is changing that? So the name tags and stuff aren't going to be counted in the 140. So now you'll be able to explain it no problem because you'll have an extra 10 letters.
It'll just give me more ways to be verbose and say a bunch of nothing. I love Twitter, but
not enough letters.
It's better than
Especially
Facebook.
for a dyslexic person like myself.
Yeah, that's fair.
And to save time, I'm going to give you one last question. And
Sure.
This one is about the Cambrian explosion.
Cambrian explosion. Which Cambrian explosion? Are you talking about the differentiation of different life, or are you talking about
Basically, the one that I keep hearing is evolution can't explain the Cambrian explosion, therefore it's over.
Cambrian explosion? I've actually never heard anybody bring that up to me. Relatively short evolutionary period events. where most major phyla appear. Oh, well, okay. I honestly, that's not, evolutionary biology is not necessarily my biggest forte, but I will say that there are a amazing bunch of different coincidences that happen as these celestial events happen to our planet. For instance, one of the greatest extinctions of life ever on this planet happened because the planet heated up a little bit too much. We don't really have necessarily the best explanation for it, but it did heat up so much, and it presented a type of conditions that allowed for a type of bacteria in the ocean to overproduce. And because they overproduced, they produced a lot of byproducts. Their byproducts were greenhouse gases. Those greenhouse gases effectively killed almost everything on the planet, wiped the slate completely clean. And the change of degree was really, really negligible. And this is because an ecosphere that's self-contained like our planet is, it is fragile. It's fragile in the short term. It's robust in the long term. And so these greater forces caused a mass extinction. Now, with the Cambrian explosion not necessarily being super, super familiar, I would wage a guess that it was just a time where life was propelled further to evolve or to differentiate itself because of favorable conditions. Life wants to change. Biology wants to change. Evolution wants to happen. It's the natural state of carbon-based life to change.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that people don't realize is the Cambrian period is almost 25 million years. You're not talking about a small period of time. And when they talk about an explosion, that explosion didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like it was a single cell organism and poof, it turned into an ostrich.
Sure.
It's a slow progression, and 25 million years, geologically, that's a fast period of time, but it's a fast period of time in reality. I mean, it's a long, long, long time.
For sure, find a different word than explosion.
Yeah.
For sure. Like,
explosion seems very strange.
They call it an explosion, basically, because in geological time, 25 million years is not a long period of time. And whereas most evolutionary processes happen on extreme time scales, like you're talking in like hundreds of millions of years, this happened in such a small 25 million year window where the diversification went from, harder to differentiate between a plant and animal at that point to identifiable organisms. That is something that is very mind-boggling to see this happening at such a pace. But again, we're talking about 25 million years here. This is not talking about 5 years from now, Well,
there's also an interesting part too, like, is it so fast? Well, I mean, compared to what? I mean, what other biospheres are these creationists trying to compare this to?
Yeah.
I mean, are they privy to some other type of planet and its ecosystem and its ecological evolutionary model that they are somehow comparing, and that's why it seems a little fast?
I know, and
actually,
if 25 years is an explosion, how about fucking 7 days, you dumb fucks?
Yeah. Sounds a bit suspicious if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean,
that's funny.
Their only explanation I get is poof, God did it. So
exactly, in and not even 7 days. It was like a day for the animals, and then they named them all. He brought them out in front and fucking named them all.
It's crazy, and I try really hard. When you start talking about the logic thing and like positions where I come from, when I get to talking to people about creationism and that sort of thing, I always try and make allowances. I try and make allowances with a lot of my intellectual opponents, especially when I'm talking about identity politics with people. Oh boy. But especially with creationists, I try and make a lot of allowances to say, if this is your position, if this is the thing that you believe and the thing that you're coming from, that's fine. Don't debate science with me using creationism. If this is your belief, that's fine. I respect it. You say, yeah, believe whatever you want. I don't care. It's totally fine. But don't presume to say that your faith can somehow trump my desire for empiricism.
Yeah.
That's not fair. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to you. It's totally dishonest, and it's a shitty way to talk to somebody.
I agree.
For sure.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
This is your Big Gay World for the week ending June 3rd, 2016. This week, a young gay couple in Morocco is jailed after having sex in their car. Good news from Massachusetts on transgender rights. And bad news from Romania, where momentum against marriage equality is building. Our first story is from Gaystar News. A young gay couple are in jail after being found guilty of homosexuality in Morocco. Prosecutors sped through a trial before an investigation had even been completed, and they weren't able to get proper legal representation. The couple, who was unnamed to protect their safety, had gone to a deserted area in the outskirts of Wayward, a southern city of the North African country, on May 26th. Police reportedly caught the two young men having sex in their car and arrested them under Article 489 of the Penal Code, which criminalizes, quote, lewd or unnatural acts with an individual of the same sex, end quote. Despite the public prosecutor ordering a full investigation to be conducted before it was presented to the city's court of first instance, the two men were quickly found guilty. The gay couple were handed a sentence of 6 months. Aswat Collective, the gay rights organization based in Morocco, told Gaystar News that lawyers had refused to defend the detainees because they had been charged with homosexuality. A spokesperson told Gaystar News that the detainees asked for an appeal, and the file will be transferred to the Court of Appeal in Agadir. Morocco has seen several arrests of gay people across the country, with the most high-profile case being in Beni Mellal. In March, a mob caught a gay couple having sex and brutally assaulted the two of them. The couple were then arrested for the crime of homosexuality. A video of the attack went viral online. Human rights organizations are attempting to repeal the law that criminalizes homosexuality and free the people who are in jail for gay sex. Those charged under Article 489 of the Penal Code face sentences ranging from 3 months to 6 years in prison and a fine. Our next story is from Think Progress. The Massachusetts House passed a bill Wednesday that would expand discrimination protection for transgender individuals and allow them to use the bathroom and locker room that matches their gender identity. After years of consideration, it now has a clear path to becoming law. The measure passed comfortably through the Democratic-controlled House by a vote of 116 to 36 after a long debate and after 22 proposed amendments to the bill were rejected. Massachusetts Governor Republican Charlie Baker said on Tuesday he will sign the bill if it makes its way to his desk. Before the governor's statement on Tuesday supporting discrimination protection for transgender people, Baker had come under fire for dodging the issue during recent appearances. Baker's current stance represents a dramatic shift from his position when he ran for governor in 2010. Nevertheless, with Baker's current support for the bill and the strong support from the Massachusetts legislature, the bill is likely to be signed into law. Positive news in the context for the fight for trans rights in the United States. It seems the governor of North Carolina is on the news weekly, reiterating his intent not to back down on HB 12, even though the economic impacts of the anti-trans bill are mounting. This week, the NBA commissioner informed the media that he was exploring options concerning the NBA All-Star Game if a resolution to the issue isn't found by summer's end. Our last story is from Romania. A constitutional war on gay rights is brewing in Romania as religious conservative activists have managed to get 3 million people to sign a petition to ban same-sex marriage. Currently, the Constitution uses gender-neutral language to describe marriage, defining it as a union of two people. This has conservatives nervous, seeing the rise of LGBT rights across the world, and so has launched a campaign to make sure same-sex marriage doesn't happen at home. As you can imagine, the Orthodox Church and other anti-gay activists are spearheading the effort. Just to underline how perilous the situation is, the activists only needed 500,000 signatures to be able to submit their petition to government. Their 3 million signature level was the result of people on the ground going door to door in grassroots fashion. While any change to the law would require approval from the Constitutional Court, a majority vote in Parliament, and a national referendum, Green Party MP Ramus Cernia told Gay Star News that he hopes the court will agree that, quote, no revision shall be made if it results in the suppression of the citizens' fundamental rights and freedoms as per Romanian law, end quote. He also noted that despite the large number who promote homophobia, there are more and more people who are speaking and writing in favor of LGBT rights. Vlad Visky, another LGBT activist in that country, also expressed concern that if a ban on marriage equality happens, the conservative groups will not stop there. Bans on abortion, bans on pornography, policies to discourage divorce, and a ban on all sex education in schools is also on the agenda. Visky also says, quote, the LGBT community in Romania seems to have very little options in the battle with the Goliath that is the Orthodox Church. Local groups are poorly funded, very few people are out and ready to represent the cause, and there is still fear amongst activists to openly ask for the legalization of gay marriage. The battle in Romania is high stakes and will play out over the coming months. And that's been your Big Gay World for this week.
Beyond the smiles and hugs, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau admits he's been running a government in contrast to his image.
We were perhaps behaving in a way that was resembling more the previous government than the kind of approach and tone that we promised throughout the electoral campaign.
The Liberals have caved in the face of harsh criticism over their divisive plan to overhaul how Canadians will vote in the next election.
The government has agreed with us today that no one party should have the power to unilaterally push through changes to our voting system.
So, under opposition pressure, today the government agreed to establish a new committee on electoral reform with an opposition-led majority. Just 5 Liberals, but 3 Conservatives, 2 New Democrats, and 1 each from the Green Party and Bloc have the potential to influence change.
My first priority has never been who has the majority on this committee. My priority has been to establish the committee, to get it going, and to move the conversation, frankly, from that on process to the substance of electoral reform.
But Conservatives say it's a smokescreen, saying proportional voting or a ranked ballot system tends to benefit Liberals or New Democrats whose support is spread across the country, while Conservatives have more concentrated pockets of strength. Their seat count could be reduced under a different voting system. So they're demanding a nationwide referendum before moving ahead on change.
No matter who the committee talks to and no matter what report they write, at the end of the day, it's up to Canadians to say yes or no.
Now, whether the Liberal majority will adopt any of the recommendations is another story. Either way, the clock is ticking. The government's pledges to come up with a new plan within 18 months, and Elections Canada then has to scramble to usher in the new system by 2019.
Okay, so basically what's happening is they're going to form a committee of 5. Okay, so it's 4 Liberal MPs, 1 chairperson, 3 Conservatives, 2 NDPs, 1 Green Party, because the Green Party has 1 seat in Canada, and the Bloc de Québécois, which is a Quebec separatist party, they also have 1 seat.
They have a seat?
Yeah, they have, because they got voted in the federal election in Quebec, right? So,
wow.
Of course they do. There's over 9 million people in Quebec, and in a country that has 35 million, it's very easy for them to get at least 1 seat. For American people that aren't familiar with Canadian politics, when I say liberal, that's a party. They're called the Liberals. Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister. They have the majority of seats in Canada. They weren't going to do the committee thing, but he had taken a lot of heat, so they've decided to form a committee of all the parties to make a proportional voting system. And I'll let David or Sun jump in at any time.
Yeah, I believe they were going to do a committee, but they weren't going to do it proportionally. It was supposed to be on the way the seats were allocated versus the popular vote. So this compromise that's been suggested is actually how distributed as per the popular vote, which is what I think the NDP wanted originally. So Justin Trudeau has been accused, I think, as it said in the audio, of sort of doing the strong arm, old style way of doing things, reminiscent of the previous government. So he sort of changed his tune, because no one wants to be accused of being Harper.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Not in Canada, right?
But backing the truck up for us uneducated people that have no idea about Canadian politics, why are they wanting to change what is going on at the moment? So why are they wanting to introduce reform? What is the purpose of what are they trying to achieve?
To try to get it closer to one man, one vote, because a lot of the votes mean, like, I think they said something like 30% of the votes last time were unrepresented.
We currently have the first past the post system of voting. So we basically, I guess,
so this is for legislation in Parliament. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, for Parliament.
And then it goes to the Senate, which is all rigged by Harper's people anyway, right?
Yeah, but Harper is gone. No, it is a rubber stamp. We went through this on either the last episode or the one before that. Of course, it could get stopped in the Senate. But before any of this even happens, the conservative leader, I don't know if you caught that in the video or if it was the same audio or it was the same one I listened to earlier, they're calling a nationwide referendum because in the new voting process or some of the things that are being spoken about, they're not going to be represented properly because their votes come in small pockets, where NDP and Liberals are spread out across the country. So if you have rural voters, they'll be worth as much as big city conservative out west voters. So before any of this even takes place, the Conservatives are already, even though it's supposed to be bipartisan, the Conservatives are already putting fucking roadblocks up.
But one of the things I think is really important about the new process, or to trying to talk about and implement a new process in voting in Canada, the idea is important to me is that it's more inclusive. More people, they want more people to come out to vote, because a lot of people were disenfranchised with the voting system because they weren't being represented by casting a ballot. So now this new process will hope to rectify that concept so that they can get into a government that represents their opinions and their ideas. So I think that this is a kind of refreshing approach to our political system.
I don't know how this would ever work, but Jeff, in Canada, when we vote for the MP of the seat in our area. So
it's representative of your local people.
So the party picks the leader, so we don't have the primaries that you guys have. You vote for that MP. That MP is the seat in your area. The party with the most seats has a leader. I would actually like to see a system, if we could have a kind of a mismatch of it, where I get to vote for an MP of my choosing, but I also get to vote for the leader of a party. That's just me. I know Sun's shaking her head over there, but that's just me personally, because I may not, my MP may be a crazy GMO fucktard.
It might happen.
For my party, and it did happen, and I would have rather have voted for the Liberal MP and the leader of the NDP.
Well, we have the same problem with with the states, with whatever kind of representative is going to be representing us. It's kind of a grab bag. I am really curious though. So you guys vote on your MPs to see who's going to go and represent the people in Canadian Parliament, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how does the election for Prime Minister go?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's it. That you vote for the MP.
The MPs vote for the Prime Minister.
So what happens in all Commonwealth countries is that we've got a system based on the Westminster system, which is that in each area, the country is divided by population to have sections of the country, right? Sure. And in each section, you vote for the person that you think represents your views most likely aligned with you.
And then make districts for the states. Yeah.
And in the parliament, that represents one chair. So one seat. And so in parliament, the person or the party with the most seats then is the the leader of that particular party becomes the prime minister. Does that make sense?
Really?
Yeah, so the leader is picked by the
Really?
party prior.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't
going
vote
into
for the
election,
prime minister, essentially.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
yeah, so
Well, that's my
going
thought.
into an election, you know already who the leader of that party is. And so if you
Sure.
look at Australian politics, which is also based on the same system, right, you'll notice, if you've ever kept up with it over the last few years, that we have been Rolodexing our prime ministers in a very fast fashion and have had 5 in the last 5 years.
I
The
have
reason
noticed
for that has been because their internal party politics has ousted the leader of the party, which therefore ousts the prime minister.
Just pure cancer. Pure cancer. Okay. I get it. I understand.
But what I'm saying, Dave, with regards to your mutated system,
Yeah.
what that effectively does is make our systems the US system. Because that's precisely what happens in the US, is that you vote for a local representative and a president, right? Which means that in US House of Reps
Yes, I
and
understand.
the Senate, you can be the president, i.e. President Obama, and in the Senate he has a minority, fellow Democrats, so the GOP has the majority, and in the what's the other house? Not the House of Representatives. I can't freaking remember.
You got the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and the House of Reps. Also, the Democrats are minorities in both of those. So effectively, you get a stalemate government
Yep.
because
That
they're
is
blocking
pretty much how it is.
everything that President Obama is trying to do, which would be what would happen in the Westminster system if we were to go with the system that you'd like to propose.
What's fascinating about the American system, though, is that the actual measure by which we elect a president has nothing to do with the public's voting. Has nothing to do with the public's
It's
voting.
the college.
Yeah, the Electoral College, which, I mean, who's the Electoral College? A bunch of people. Sometimes they're politicians. I mean, for the most part, they're all somehow involved in politics. But is there the scope and breadth of who is going to be part of the Electoral College is an amorphous, weird, fucked up anemone of just shit. It makes absolutely no fucking sense by any measure, by rational human standards. But we do have this college, and they are the ones who are actually going to vote in who the president is going to be. I live in Oregon, so in November, when we're going to vote for the president, I'm not voting. I don't have to vote. My state always votes blue, will always vote blue. It doesn't matter what I put on my ballot. Every single person in Oregon could vote for Trump. Oregon will vote for the Democrat. Doesn't matter.
So tell me, how does it then happen that there are swing states?
Swing states are the states that have enough of a disparity in the population numbers where you have a close to equal representation of conservative or Republican constituents and Democratic or liberal. And so because there's a balance between the two, like Ohio, Florida to a certain extent, these states are the states that don't always vote one specific way. So the actual presidency comes down to like 7 states. And everybody else, the other 43 states, your vote means fucking nothing. It means nothing.
In the swing states electoral colleges, how does it, so what, one time they decide to go with the blues and one time they decide to go, like, this is what I don't understand.
It's simply an arbitrary decision.
So does the popular vote of that state actually, so my understanding was that the electoral colleges are, so if you look at the map of the state, it's broken up into lots of little squares.
Little different
And
districts.
as the votes come in, one goes blue, one goes red, whatever. And in the electoral college, that electoral college member for that little square votes as per the colour that was voted in. Is that not how it works?
No, see, they should, but they don't have to. There is literally nothing that enforces their decision to go and vote along with how the public wishes. There's nothing. There's no reason that they have to.
And that's
the
what's
problem.
happening with Bernie Sanders.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because the wildly popular outcropping of people who are interested in Bernie Sanders doesn't mean anything. Because if you can get delegates, because delegates are what are going to get a person into the actual election. Those delegates, you don't have to cater to an entire population of people. Fuck the country. You need to cater to like a group of about 1,200 people. That's it. That's all you have to cater to.
That's for the primaries.
That's for the primaries.
Yeah.
That's for the primaries.
For the
to get
general
that person.
electorate, a general election.
There's only ever two. We only ever have two. That's it.
What I mean is, who do you have to cater for?
Oh,
so
for the
my
general
question
election?
really, no, my question really is
7 states. Is what he said.
Yeah, you have to cater to 7
I
states.
understand that, but my question really is that the Republicans are known for being dirtier, playing dirtier than the Democrats.
Since the Clinton era, the Democrats are just as bad. Just as bad.
Oh, I'd suggest that in my humble opinion, I think they're both dirty, but I think the GOP plays much dirtier, in my opinion. And the reason I say that is why then don't they monopolise the Electoral College so that it makes no difference in any case, right?
Well, you have to still placate the masses. You know, you still have to play the game to like get everybody still wanting to go along with it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. No, it's totally fine. It's working as intended. It's totally don't question too much. But you do make a good point though, and I do think some parties are worse than others. This year I would say I can't say that the GOP is worse than the Democrats, but I'm sorry, we shouldn't be talking about American politics. We're talking about Canadian politics.
David, how do you actually see the reform having that much of a benefit or changing, like, because they haven't really set out an outline for exactly what they're going to do. How do you feel
we've had a referendum about this issue. I want to say in the last, it was like 2 or 3 elections ago, where we voted on keeping the first past the post system or going to something else, and people didn't like change. And as long as it's communicated why the system needs to change, and if the average voter or voting public understands what's going on, it could have a difference. I really need to know what they plan to put on the table and what choices they plan to present to the voters.
Let me ask you and Edward, do you feel represented in your vote?
No.
And you, David?
I've not thought about that. I mean, this last election, I did feel pressure to vote a certain way, because I'm not sure if you heard about Jeff. We had to do a lot of what was it called? What we did to make sure Harper was out? What's it called again? Strategic voting. So I didn't feel free to vote for the candidate that I wanted to. We wanted to get rid of the Conservatives, so they organized the plan to, based on your district, vote for a certain MP in order so that your vote maximizes getting Harper out. So in some ways, you feel that that your vote might not mean something.
Yeah. Because you're a Green Party voter normally, right, David?
Yeah, I can change, but usually I wanted to vote for Green this time.
Can I ask, Ed, do you feel underrepresented because who you voted for didn't win?
No. My province have this staunch divide. It's either conservative or liberal. They don't even entertain any other parties. So even if I wanted to vote for, say, the NDP, I would be probably the only person voting for the NDP in my and it matters not what I vote.
What do you guys think? You're fucking Americans or what?
Well, in my province, there has only been 2 parties ever in provincial politics that have ever been able to become the premier. It's either liberal or conservative. There has never been a New Democratic Party premier. There has never been a Green Party premier. It's always one or the other. You usually have 10 or 15 years of one party, they get ousted, and then the other party takes over.
But you're having more of a religious problem with the Liberal Party than you did with the Conservative Party that was last in government. The Liberal Party is the one that's raising the Christian flag at your House of, at your representative governments.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
and the conservatives refused to do it and told the Christians to beat it, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that they're trying to institute in my own province, which is the liberals are kicking out, which are, is the idea of if an MHA, member of the House of Assembly, doesn't do what its constituents want, they have the right to pull him out of office and actually re-vote again. That's what they're trying to institute. One party is the Conservatives, which I think is a great idea, but they're not able to implement that because of the Liberal Party majority government. But anyway, that's a side note.
So in Canada, like I know you guys have at least four reasonably represented parties, right? The NDP, your Liberal, your Conservative, and your Green, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have about 15.
You have about 50. That's good. That's good. But I am curious though.
Party, by the way. Pirates.
Did the Pirate Party come to Canada?
Yes. And we also have the Rhino Party.
The Rhino Party.
And this one you'll fucking love. I don't know if they're still around or not, but we had a Flying Yogi Party.
A fly?
They were called the Natural Party.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Fuck me,
Australia's got the Australian Sex Party. We've got about 15 or 20 as well, and it's run by the porn industry.
I think Bering and Sugar Tits told me about that. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
That's what you guys
but
need.
I'm curious.
You guys need more parties.
So that's what I'm curious about in Canada is like the main two conservative versus liberal.
In current status, yes.
Yeah.
But NDP over the last, say, 20 years has built up to a party where they could take government.
With the right leader.
Right,
Jack Layton didn't die, they would be the...
That's good. That's good. I mean, I don't know what their policies are, but like having more than two choices for overt leadership, that's a good idea. That's great.
That's
awesome.
Federally. Provincially, they're very competitive, and they do actually run a few...
That's how you gotta do it. If you're gonna do
politics,
you gotta play the game. I mean, my country's fucked, dude.
That's partially because, Jeff,
Yeah.
The Commonwealth countries, so sure. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Great Britain, and some, generally our elections are not funded in the same way that yours are. So ours are funded through taxpayers. So there's an independent body. In Australia, it's called the Australian Electoral Commission, so the AEC.
In Canada, it's called Elections Canada.
It oversees, and they are all bureaucrats. So they are anally retentive and process orientated lawyers, right? And it is completely independent, and it oversees totally the entire election process. Funding for parties is also done in Australia. I'm not sure how it works in Canada, but in Australia, the amount of, because we've got preferential voting, the amount of number ones that any particular party or person representing a particular party gets, they get X amount of dollars for that. So you fund your party by how involved you are in the politics of the party.
And you have to work with a budget, a reasonable budget.
Correct.
That's
correct.
interesting. I saw...
hang on one second. Private citizens are allowed to make donations to the party, but it's capped. So you can't donate. It's capped. You can't donate over a certain amount, and no corporation or business is allowed to. Unions are allowed to, but it's only through grouping the union members together. So if a union, just say the Carpenters Union decides we're going to back the NDP, you're allowed to take donations from the union, but it has to come from the members. It can't come from the LLC itself.
One large financial entity cannot necessarily sway the whole. You know, that's really interesting.
And I just wanted to make one more point before you jumped in, Jeff, it doesn't take money to get into the debate here. It doesn't take money to get on television. It takes seats. And normally it's 3, but this year, even though Elizabeth May only had 1, they still let her get on TV and debate. So we actually had 4 parties debating instead of just 2. Wow. And the other thing is, this was actually our longest election in history. It was 73 days. Normally you call an election, 4 weeks later you have a leader because we pay for it and we don't want that shit dragged out.
I gotta say, you guys are just right on the cusp of converting this American shitlord into thinking this parliamentary system is fucking fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love, I see Sonia's cracking up. You know, don't get me wrong. I do, this is gonna sound really fucked up, but I'll say it anyway. I do believe in capitalism. I believe in money and challenge and innovation to be the forthright competitors to try and push society into a different direction. But I also see that, especially with our elections these days, you know, in American elections and American politics, and I have to say, before I continue, guys, I'm so sorry that American politics have literally just swamped and overrun the world. Holy dick. It's terrible this year.
We expect a fucking form of compensation from you, Jeff.
Oh, God. I'll buy all of you guys drinks. All of you guys, you get drinks from me. Drinks are on me.
That's
drinks
the least you can bloody well do.
So
drinks
Jeff,
are on the dirty, filthy American.
So Jeff, we have in Commonwealth in Britain, Western Europe, Northern Europe, we don't always have social democratic governments running the country, but our system is basically a social democratic system. I don't know if you know the concept of.
I'm more like the basic fundamental.
The basic fundamentals of it. So social democrats don't not believe in capitalism or think that competition is good.
Well, sure.
We just want to regulate. Like we're not democratic socialists. We're not democratic socialists. We do want capitalism. We want it regulated so that it has a fairness to it, so that the people that have more aren't necessarily going to be able to trample on the little guy. I'm more of an even playing field. Like, I'm a sole proprietor myself, and I'm still a social democrat, and I understand capitalism fully, and I understand the harder I work, the more I make.
I think the main part of saying that is not necessarily to say that you know, Canada doesn't embrace capitalism. It's more that when you guys are talking about your parliamentary organized political system, your political system first and foremost is coming from a state of representation. That's coming from a state of, you know, your MPs need to facilitate and accurately represent the bulk of its peoples. Whereas American politics, we say that's how it works, but ultimately American politics is wholly consumed solely by capitalism. And so much so that this election cycle in and of itself is unbelievably swayed in a different direction because of a strange trick of capitalism and how the public views capitalism. And Trump is one of the most amazing examples of this, because Trump is a capitalist and everybody loves Trump. They think, oh God, he's a capitalist. It's wonderful. But you can't buy him. You can't say he's like bought by special interests, because all these special interests have way less money than him. So this capitalist play that is the soul of American political system. You guys might still have capitalism as a part of your society, but it's not like the overwhelming invisible hand that's kind of directing your political system. And for that, I'm jealous. Very jealous.
Well, one of the things I like about Canadian system too, like the one in Australia, New Zealand, and even in Britain, is the fact that an American American president would never stand up to the Westminster argumentation period and have his feet held to the fire like they do here. Our premier,
I'm familiar with that, yeah.
Our prime minister has more power in the country, and so with that extra power that he has to be held accountable, and the question periods get pretty heated. You actually see your government in work when you watch it. You can actually watch the opposition attack and attack and attack. It's not there just for the sake of argument. It's there to make sure that the best course of action is going towards the people of the country.
Is this like this the weekly thing they do in Britain where it's like Ask the Prime Minister, where it's like a televised like?
Well, it is televised, but it's the opposition gets to fucking drag him out in the middle of the floor and beat the fuck out of him.
And he has to be there, like president.
Yes.
So what happens?
That's fantastic. That's amazing.
What happens is in our parliament, in the House of Representatives, the Prime Minister is on the floor. And so each party have the right to question, and they have what they call question time, and they have X amount of minutes, and they can come up and specifically ask the Prime Minister or any of the Treasurer or the Defence Minister or the Environment, any minister, a specific question of what the fuck is going on. Wow. And they pull out documentation and go, you quoted and you're quoted to have said rah, 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 and the evidence is rah, rah, rah. How do you explain that? And they get their feet held to the fire, just like Ed said. And it is the most interesting fucking television you could ever imagine.
That's amazing. Can you guys imagine what it would be like if George Bush had to do that?
No, I can't.
Holy shit.
Because I'm telling you, during Bush's era in Canada, he would have been dealing with Harper. He would have been dealing with Jack Layton. Yeah, no, Paul Martin. Yeah, no, it wouldn't have worked for him at all. We'll jump out and we'll be back in a minute with the next segment.
We've been speaking with Jeff Holiday. You can find out more about Jeff and his YouTube channel at jeffholiday.com. Links are in the show notes. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
To the curious, the inquisitive, the seekers of knowledge, to the ones who just want to know about life, about the universe, about yourself. Not cute questions, big questions, ones that matter. To the rebels, the artists, the free thinkers, and the innovators who care less about labels and more about truth, who believe nonconformity is more than a bumper sticker, that knowledge is more than words on a page. You're young, you're old, you're powerful beyond measure, and the fuel of that power is not magic or mysticism, but knowledge. The things you see, the things you feel, the things you know to be true. Sure, some will doubt you. Let them. Dare to think for yourself, to look for yourself, to make up your own mind. Because in the eternal debate for answers, the one thing that's true is the power of logic.
This is PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, senior campaigner Ashley Byrne. Question, do you agree that zoo officials had to kill a gorilla because they say they couldn't take a chance a gorilla would react badly if they shot him with a tranquilizer dart?
In many circumstances, gorillas have shown that they can be protective of children or small beings. Frankly, the fact that this gorilla was in the Cincinnati Zoo in the first place, that's the first place that the situation went wrong. Because even under the best circumstances, captivity is never adequate for gorillas and other primates. And in cases like this, we see that it's even deadly. And this tragedy is exactly why PETA urges families to stay away from any facility, zoos, circuses, or otherwise, that displays animals as a sideshow for humans to gawk at.
This woman obviously has not read Genesis, and even if she did, it wouldn't have any impact on her. But human beings travel all over the world to gawk at animals, precisely because they're unusual, they're interesting, some are cute, some are deadly, There's no way human beings are going to not be interested in animals, gawking at them, out on safari, hunting them or what have you. By the way, you know there's another factor in this, Snurdly? A lot of people think that all of us used to be apes. Don't doubt me on this. A lot of people think that all of us used to be gorillas, and they're looking for the missing link out there. The evolution crowd, they think we were originally apes. I've always had, if we were the original apes, then how come Harambe is still an ape, and how come he didn't become one of us? Well, that's why they were looking for the missing link, Mr. Limbaugh. Your question is absurd. Here's one more from Ashley Byrne from PETA. the gorilla's endangered. He was 17 years old. They've had him for quite a long time.
He was 17 years old, and reports say that he had a young baby of his own, who, of course, is now without his father. So, again, I think this shows us the tragic side of keeping animals in zoos for our entertainment, that it can go horribly wrong, and that the zoo failed Harambe by taking the risk that something like this could happen.
So Harambe's child is now without a father. One of the many unfortunate aspects of this. So another busted gorilla home.
Oh my fucking God. Can that guy be any dumber? Like, we are apes, you fucking moron. It wasn't that we used to be apes. We are fucking apes.
No, we're not. We're primates.
We're primates, yes. Okay. So is the gorilla.
But technically, we are dry-nosed, old world apes. We're still part of that same subcategory.
Yeah. We have a common ancestor.
And we have a common ancestor with the chimpanzee, closer to the bonobo than to the gorilla. The gorilla is a distant cousin. And no, we were never fucking gorillas. We were always human beings. What you are right now, your species, was always what it was. Part of the ape family, you dumb fuck.
I think he subscribed to the Pokemon version of evolution. You know how in Pokemon where like things literally transform into like Pikachu evolves into like Raichu. Like I think a lot of people do think that's how evolution works. It's a
Rush Limbaugh, I choose you.
I love this particular comment that's on the Pathos story about that Rush Limbaugh has the Ken Ham logic that has been debunked by a grade schooler. Apes simply didn't become humans. We evolved from a common ancestor, the same as Protestants evolved from Catholics. So how are they still Catholics? It's just so ridiculous, isn't it?
But one thing I do have to say is that this PETA woman that he had on her thing, she was wrong as well.
Too. Yeah, she's a crazy bitch.
I mean, the rationale for having apes or gorillas in a enclosure in a zoo is not just for people to gawk at. There are many reasons. Well, one of them is so that the only way we can conserve certain species is for humans to be interested in these things. If we're not interested in these animals, then we won't be able to protect them. And a lot of people go to zoos, not just the average person, but a scientist studying behavior, studying how ape social order structure works. There are a variety of reasons, and great bonus is there is a breeding stock. If in the wild they become low, we have breeding stock to be able to put them back into the wild. That's the zoo.
She conflated zoos and circuses. Like I completely agree with her on the realms of circuses, like animals for our sheer pleasure. Zoos have conservation efforts, and that's fine. But like you're gonna see in the next 25 years, we're gonna wonder why we even had circuses with animals. It's gonna be like the most profane thing.
And I will say this as somebody that has hunted. I personally am not crazy about zoos. I understand their place. I understand that it's very educational for children in North America to be able to go to, say, the Toronto Zoo and see African species and to see reptiles and to see great apes and to see monkeys. But for me, I walk through a zoo. I don't gain pleasure from that. I just don't. I've never felt good about animals being in zoos. But for that woman from PETA to conflate, the gorilla being a dad with the gorilla giving a shit that he's a dad, that's just not true. Because in the wild, they are there and they are like the leader of their group, but that's for pussy. That's not for the fucking little gorillas. They don't care about the little gorillas. It's their females that they care about. Let's not conflate it and make it like baby daddy.
More than that, though, zoos have evolved over the last, 30, 40 years from being enclosures that are not adequate for the particular animal.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, as our understandings of animal behavior has increased over the last, 40, 50 years, our zoos have also evolved to be ecologically and animal sustained in a as fair as possible manner as it can get. And many zoos actually take in animals that were injured or stupidly pets, which happens a lot in the US for some strange reason. They can hold exotic pets, and so they take those animals that the owners no longer wish to have anymore.
And another thing that is interesting about this case that wasn't brought up in this clip by either was that these animals were born and raised in the zoo. These are not taken from the wild directly. And Harambe, the biggest issue I have about great, beautiful animal being shot was it was a no-win situation for the zoo or for the animal. He was a beautiful specimen, a beautiful animal, and it makes me upset to have to know that he was shot. But there is no greater a person that understands that than the keeper, who wept when he saw that he had no choice but to put this animal down. He raised him from a baby. He knows the animal inside and out. The mother was irresponsible.
Totally.
And it was a tragic situation. The child's life or Harambe's. And unfortunately, Harambe had to sacrifice his life. And
and to the point, Ed, if it was your child, I mean, we're parents amongst us, so that's you too, Dave. Can you ever point to a moment when you have been a non-perfect parent at that particular time, right? We've all done stupid things that just happened in a blink of an eye, and kids can be crazy and difficult to, do you know what I mean? Shit can happen. Yeah. And we are not perfect. We're human beings. And the reality is that had it have been my daughter versus that wonderful, wonderful animal that I respect and love and adore, the choice is easy, right?
Yeah.
As sad as it is.
I was online and I seen some people that are supposed to be human rights activists and SJW saying, gorilla over human child any day. Gorillas are extinct. Human child isn't. Ammunition would have been better spent on the child's mother instead of the gorilla.
Disgusting.
Which is bullshit, first of all. But the other day was in Shoppers Drug Mart, and most of the listeners know that I have a severely autistic child, and I was carrying a bunch of stuff and I couldn't hold on to him, and he ran to the back of the store. I didn't realize that the back, the other door was open out to the parking lot. I thought I had time to walk over to the counter, put my stuff down, then go and get him. By the time I put my stuff down on the counter, he was clear halfway across the parking lot. I had to run out of the store, run across a busy strip mall parking lot, and grab my kid. Now, if he had been hit, people would have been calling me a neglectful parent. But all I was doing was putting stuff down instead of throwing it on the floor. Literally, maybe 45 seconds, and my son was halfway across the parking lot.
And it's so easy. That sort of shit happens so easy, right? And if you are judged on that snapshot of your parenting, right? And that's the snapshot that gets publicly aired to everyone. I mean, you're going to fail. Totally and utterly fail.
But she was a cunt afterwards with the God shit.
Absolutely. And of course, and I don't discount that. But at the end of the day, no parent is fucking perfect because we're all human beings and we cannot control our children 100% of the time. And there's just a reality of life. And they do stupid shit and you maintain that. Hopefully the majority of the time it doesn't cause any main problems for the child or for anyone else in the environment. But to
her
bitch on about
neglectful
her is
nature-
ridiculous.
Yeah, but her neglectful nature in the end saved a situation. Because if it was me, rightly or wrongly, and probably wrongly, I would have jumped in there after my son.
I understand that.
And that is probably the wrong move, because he probably would have got aggressive at that point. We probably both would have died. But as a non-neglectful parent, I would have been terrified, where she seemed like fucking, I don't know, lunch was being served.
Yeah, but we all react differently as well, right? So, I have personally been in situations that have been very somber, and because of my own idiotic way of reacting, I've got the giggles, for example. And I've laughed at the most inappropriate times in my life that I could ever imagine. So if someone was to snapshot me at that particular
Like any time Edwards told a joke.
if someone was to take a snapshot of me at that particular time, they would think I was the most callous human being in the world. And I hope that you all know that that's not the case, right? So you can't, yes, she was a dick later on about that. It just, sometimes shit happens, right? And that's just the reality. And if it's a human being versus an animal, no matter how majestic or great that animal is, in my opinion, human life outweighs that.
Yeah, team people for sure. Go ahead, Edward.
The caveat in the situation is not that, and I agree with you totally, Son and David, that shit happens sometimes. The caveat in this situation that there were people there that had heard her speak to her son about how it would be cool if she can get a picture of him in the enclosure, in the water. If that was the case, and I'm not saying that it is, I'm saying that that's what was reported. That's the case, you can say, okay, maybe she coaxed the child into having that perception. If that's the case, then I have less sympathy for the mother.
No, I don't either in that situation, because that would be something stupid, I would say. In fact, I took my daughter to see the gorilla enclosures at the Christchurch Zoo not long ago, and it's just the sort of shit that I would say too. Oh my God, how cool would it be if you could be inside holding his hand?
Yeah, but I mean, you also have to think about the child's age. I mean,
I understand that, but I personally get so swept up in the moment of something so awesome that would be something I would absolutely blurt out. That doesn't mean that I'm coaxing my child to do that.
No, okay. I can see your point, and I'll concede it.
No, but I can see it planting a seed.
Yeah.
I can too, to a degree, but it's certainly not a coaxing. And perhaps the child was like, oh, cool, Mum would be so proud of me doing this. Look, I get all
and
of
so
that.
when the child drop down, wasn't there a significant drop into the?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't.
Look, it's an unfortunate situation, no matter which way you look at it, right? And yes, the mum in her God speak later on was an idiot, in my personal opinion, because it wasn't God that saved her child. It was the fucking sacrifice of that beautiful animal that saved her life, the child's life. That's a fact.
We don't even know that the gorilla would have killed him.
Yeah, we do.
We don't, but it's certainly the reality is.
We
is
do,
that
Edward?
Yeah.
We do know?
Yeah. Listening to the trainers, they knew the animal the best, and plus a juvenile silverback, he doesn't know his own strength at that point. You've seen the images of him being dragged. That was mine until he got to the dry pavement. The people that were there. No, the people that when they saw him being on the dry part, where they had no other choice but to shoot the animal, he would have killed him not even
intentionally.
Right. He wasn't going to kill him intentionally. He just doesn't know what he's doing. He
doesn't know his own strength, or the vulnerability of the child.
Correct.
Possibly is the better way of putting it.
And
it's a terribly sad situation. No matter how you look at it, because a gorilla innocently standing in an enclosure that is built around him has something plopped down in front of him. Curiously, will obviously go to it. People are screaming like lunatics around the place, and then his life was absolutely sacrificed for the child's life. And when you look at it from that perspective, yes, his life should have been sacrificed for the child's life.
Real quick, who's smarter? What's the girl's name again, Edward?
Harambe.
Harambe or fucking Limbaugh?
Harambe, obviously.
I mean, to put it in perspective, a fully grown silverback male has the equivalent strength of 10 adult human males. So you're talking about he would grab Rush Limbaugh and drag him is just as easy as he dragged that little kid. I mean,
so it's kind of as strong as big black gay Dave, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Same size dick too, eh, Dave? Anyway, itty bitty dicky committee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, though, is the fact that they didn't tranquilize the animal. Having a lot of experience with tranquilizing animals, I know for a fact that a lot of animals act from fear of being hit, and they get aggressive. Even docile animals.
All experts have said that it would have been worse to tranquilize the animal.
There's not. I mean, you can't use it. The sedative you'd have to use on a gorilla is not the same you'd use on a moose, for instance, and it doesn't work instantaneous. It's not like shoot the dart, he dropped. Doesn't work that way.
It's what about 7 to 10 seconds, right?
Depending on the dose, if they had the correct dosage, if they had the correct drug, it depends on the drug they use. Some take up to 30 seconds, and again. They could have killed him with the anesthesia. What could have happened?
Look, it's a terribly sad situation, but the point is that Rush Limbaugh is a complete cockhead who is less evolved than the silverback gorilla, in my opinion.
What was his name again, Edward?
Harambe.
Harambe is more evolved than fucking Rush Limbaugh.
Correct. In my humble opinion.
He doesn't even have the basic understanding of... No, but I actually think that he does have an understanding of evolution. He just, for his listeners in his fucking crazy right-wing radio show, pretends that he doesn't know what it is.
I don't know. Is he educated at all?
It's shocking, folks. There are people that think we used to be apes, that we evolved. Like, that's common knowledge.
I think it takes
not in
a lot of
circle.
effort. Like, I think that's a common effort. It is it's so easy to not really know anything about evolution. You really kind of have to go and look and do some research. If you have misunderstanding, I think a rational person would go on the internet and just try to understand. He's not interested in that. And I think partly it is because he has this base that he wants to echo chamber.
What education does he have? Does he have any formal education?
So you don't think that most people in the Western world have heard the fact that humans have evolved with common ancestors
in
and
the
are
Western world? Yes. In the United States, no. And statistically, 60-some% in the United States believe in the 7-day literal creation story. So this is the point that David's trying to make.
That doesn't mean that they've heard.
Yeah, but
that doesn't mean that they haven't heard of it.
They've heard of it, they don't understand it, or it's mixed up with their religious message.
Correct.
People are actively teaching children at a very young age in the United States that not to pay attention to evolution, it is an abomination. To move away from that kind of enculturation is almost impossible at the school system level. You have to really have a teacher that's dedicated to that one or two students to break that mindset to actually prove
they're handicapping their children.
They totally are. Dave, I was a creationist believer until my mid to late 20s.
Okay.
And in Australia, it is not the majority of, but I went to an Adventist school and I was taught
so you didn't go to public
in the
school.
Exactly right. And then when I started questioning it then took me several years to fully kind of grasp the differences, right? So it's not a quick, there's the answer, boom, life moves on. If you've been indoctrinated, as Ed has said, it sticks with you for a long, long time, and you have to genuinely change the way that you think, your mindset, to accept the new reality.
It's like programming a computer, and sometimes it's hard to erase the data that you've already saved. And this is one thing that I think, Dave, you can't really understand because of you've always been an atheist. If you've been in the religious mindset, those mind-forged manacles that are very, very hard to shake and break. And once you do, yes, the dam comes flooding. But until that little crack gets in there, that's when you believe all kinds of weird shit.
This was the Wayward Atheist Podcast. You can email us at waywardatheistpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter at Wayward Atheists and on Facebook.com/Wayward Atheists. If you enjoy our content, feel free to support us at patreon.com/Wayward Atheists.